Once upon a time, a midnight bell rang from an empty mountain, and every lantern in Lumenford turned an eerie blue. Rose petals fell in the height of summer, whispering down through chimney smoke and orchard air, and each petal became a cold spark that stung the ground. The valley had not heard that bell for 100 years, not since the road to Thornshade Castle disappeared beneath bramble and fog. Yet the note sounded close enough to touch. It was not a celebration, it was a warning. Elara, the glassmaker's daughter, found a crescent scorch on the wellstone at dawn. A silver vein pulsed through the black mark, warm as living metal. When she leaned over the water, the surface refused her reflection. It flashed a tower window burning alone in distant dark, then snapped back to pale sky. The glimpse clung to her thoughts like a hook. By evening, a peddler rolled in with a cart of cracked mirrors. He stared at the crescent scorch and said Thornshade had stirred. A beast lived there, bound to a bell and a silver-white rose under glass. Each midnight, one ring. Each ring, one petal. When the last petal fell, the curse would spread and steal dawn. The villagers argued about prayers and walls, but the peddler stepped to Elara and pressed a small mirror into her hands. Its frame was braided from pale thorns, and its glass looked deep as still water. It would not show what eyes wanted to see, he warned. It would show what hid. Before anyone could stop him, he turned his cart toward the road and vanished into dusk, leaving wheel tracks that filled with petals. Elara's courage was quiet, the kind that lived in kiln fire. At sunrise, she packed bread, rope, and water, wrapped the mirror, and slipped beyond the orchards. The road narrowed to ivy and thorn. The air tasted of mint and wet iron. With each step, brambles parted as if making room for her choice. Thornshade Castle rose above dark pines, its tower sharp against a bruised sky. Brambles crawled over its walls like living chains, yet white flowers bloomed between thorns, bright as candle flames in shadow. The iron gate opened before Elara touched it. Inside, the courtyard smelled of roses and old rain. A dry fountain held leaves that spun in circles without wind, and heavy footsteps sounded from the archway. The beast stepped into the dim light, taller than any man Elara had known, shoulders broad beneath a torn velvet coat. Fur shadowed his jaw, and old scars crossed his muzzle. One horn curved like a crescent moon, the other was broken short. Yet his eyes were the color of warm tea, and in them lived a weary gentleness that made his claws seem like a mistake. He told her to leave before the castle decided she belonged to it, and the fear in that warning was sharper than any fang. Elara asked why the lanterns had burned blue. The beast flinched and said his name had once been Rowan. He led her through dusty corridors to a tower where a great bell hung, its bronze etched with moons and thorns. Beneath it stood a glass dome sheltering a silver-white rose, petals already fallen like tears. Rowan confessed he had once mocked a hungry old woman at his door, and the sorceress had cursed him to wear the shape he deserved until he learned to open his heart at last. Elara raised the thorn mirror. In its depth, Rowan's monstrous outline wavered, and behind it appeared the young man he had been, eyes lined with regret. Around that inner figure coiled a dark vine, thorns sunk deep, tightening whenever Rowan turned away from hope. The sight did not excuse him, but it revealed the curse's appetite. Rowan had tried to starve it by locking the gates, yet loneliness fed it best. He had grown so sure he was unworthy that he treated gentleness like a trap. That night, the castle grew still. Elara and Rowan stood beneath the bell while the rose trembled under glass. When midnight arrived, the bell rang a note like iron grief. Another petal drifted down. Rowan's gaze went distant, as if stone were creeping inward. Elara held the mirror to his eyes and spoke softly, telling him gentleness was not a prize earned after perfection. It was a practice, a choice made while still afraid. Rowan's claws loosened a fraction. He did not promise anything grand, but he stayed where he was, and the air around him felt a little less sealed. At dawn, Elara insisted Rowan come to Lumenford. He resisted, imagining torches and screams, but fear was the vine's food. Elara wrapped a scarf around his shoulders and walked beside him into the square. Silence fell. Apples rolled from a dropped basket. Rowan started to retreat, and Elara set the mirror on the wellstone's crescent mark. In the glass, the villagers saw his shaking hands, his lowered gaze, and the careful way he held himself back from harm. The villagers did not become fearless, but the first wall of horror cracked. Elara's father stepped forward and offered Rowan a cup of water, his arm shaking. Rowan accepted without spilling. An old baker set a warm loaf beside the cup. A shepherd lifted a lantern high, not as a weapon, but as light to see by. Small kindnesses gathered like sparks, and the lantern flames steadied from blue to gold. Rowan remained until his fear stopped shouting and became only a quiet ache. The curse fought back. On the sixth night, a storm tore across the valley. Wind clawed at roofs, and brambles surged from the forest like dark waves, driven by the curse's last hunger for isolation. Rowan ran into the rain, not to hide behind castle walls, but to stand between the thorns and the village. The brambles lashed at Rowan, snagging fur and tearing cloth. Pain made his breath ragged, yet he did not strike back in rage. He lifted his arms and shielded the nearest cottage, choosing protection over pride. And the storm seemed to hesitate, as if listening for what kind of creature he would be. Elara reached him through the whipping rain and pressed the thorn mirror into his hands. In the glass, the dark vine writhed, frantic, trying to tighten. Rowan looked at his reflection, claws, scars, broken horn, then passed it to the lanterns bobbing in the storm, to faces watching with hope sharpened by fear. He let his heart do what it had refused for years. He cared without bargaining for praise, cared because the world was fragile and real and worth the risk. The love was not a speech, it was the act of staying present while it hurt. At midnight, the seventh hour arrived. In Thornshade's tower, the bell began its final note. Then the sound thinned from iron sorrow into something bright, like crystal struck by sunlight. The last petal did not fall. It lifted, turned, and broke into a scatter of light that poured from the castle windows across the valley, like dawn from a spilled bowl. The brambles softened, their thorns shrinking into harmless buds. Rain warmed. Rowan's claws loosened, fur receding like a tide, and his broken horns smoothed into a pale curve. Scars remained as faint lines, not erased, but gentled, as if the world had decided they could be reminders instead of sentences. When morning came, the mountain was quiet at last. Lumenford's lanterns burned amber, and the air smelled of earth and roses. Thornshade's gate stood open, and the road ran clear between brambles turned to buds. Rowan was not restored to who he had been. He was remade into who he chose to become. Elara returned to her glasswork, yet she often climbed the slope to mend windows and let light in.